Heading the first Tech Tuesday of 2023, especially on Valentine's Day. I know I personally love talking about Windows updates and features you need to know about, so I'd say it's a pretty fitting day to do it. But either way, before we begin, just a few notes. First off, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in that questions box. That is where I see all of these pop up along with our chat option. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put anything in any of those two areas. I will answer questions at the end of the presentation if I don't tackle them during the presentation. So just go ahead and let me know if you've got a question, and I'll definitely circle back around to it at the very least. Additionally, don't forget to connect with us online. We have social media. Feel free to subscribe to our weekly Monday Minute newsletter as well for the latest from us and carriers and other industry updates. Also, if you'd like to reach out to me directly, my number and email address on screen is valid, even though the picture is not. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions that you just don't feel comfortable asking in this presentation. I will put that up at the end as well, by the way, so no need to hurriedly write it down. Also, don't forget, if you haven't yet, check out Cornerstone's new AGB portal. This has been online for a while, and the URL for learning more about this is www.crnstone.com/AGB. It's shown on your screen, kind of circled in yellow there. But also, if you're just trying to log in, the web address is www.agbohio.com. Also, I will have a Tech Tuesday covering some of the ins and outs of this portal coming up here on 4/11. So keep that in mind if you're curious. And last but not least, before we get into the presentation, don't forget to register for our cash incentive program. Now, our cash incentive program for this year takes any group or individual new business sale made between January 1st of this year, 2023, and December 31st, 2023 as well as valid entries. You earn points when you sell groups or individuals, and those points add up to determine if you won at the end of the year or not. There is a total of a $7,000 cash prize for our winner, and to register, you just have to go to www.crnstone.com/cash-incentive-program. The exclamation mark is not part of that URL, but we will go there at the end of the presentation as well. So that being said, Windows updates. I know that it's something that a lot of people try to avoid and actively turn off or try to ignore as long as they can before Windows forces them to do it. In fact, I think everyone who recognizes this screen feels a little bit of dread in their chest. I know I do when I turn on my computer and don't expect to see this screen. Windows updates have been getting more and more frequent, and over time have become more and more important. A lot of people don't really see many of the changes that they implement. So people tend to think, oh, it's rolled out randomly. It takes an unpredictable amount of time to update. And that is somewhat true. There are a lot of different ways that updates help our computer and a lot of different ways that updates help keep things healthy in our computer. So let's go ahead and check some of those features. First off, security updates. That's just really important. It's what all of these updates rolling out mostly address. This would be things like your Windows firewall. And well, I say Windows firewall specifically for Windows updates, but if you use a different firewall, you'll get regular security updates from it as well. All a firewall is essentially is a list of URLs. Those URLs are known to house malicious content. So if you're trying to access a website from that URL, or if you're trying to open up email from that specific domain, which is just the in our crnstone.com as an example, it's that crnstone.com section at the end. That's really what the firewall kind of focuses on. These sort of security updates need to happen regularly. And the reason is if a new threat emerges, you want to make sure your computer is protected from that. So that's one of the main features that tends to be included in most Windows updates and why you want to update regularly. Additionally, there could be some compatibility changes. Software is changing all the time. Believe me, it definitely is. Just between last year and this year, Windows 11 came out to full use. So, that's just one example. But there are a lot of different compatibility changes that newer software tends to expect. Uh, you know, these sorts of Windows updates can help make sure that our computers can use newer tools. Additionally, there are also some upgraded drivers that are installed when your computer does those updates. These drivers are basically kind of how your computer communicates with things like printers, Wi-Fi, all of it. What a driver is a piece of software that tells your computer how to interact with hardware. And one of the most frequently updated drivers are printer drivers. It actually drives our printer servicer over here a little bit nuts sometimes. Rico, or Rico, if you use them, has their own drivers for their machines. And so whenever Windows updates, it tends to overwrite those driver settings, and it can cause some conflict. That's something more on the IT side. But just so you know, these updated drivers are something that is pretty frequently used. Additionally, and this is the most noticeable one, there are sometimes visual or integrated program changes that happen with updates. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on for the rest of this presentation. Visual and integrated program changes could be anything as simple as if you were a original user of Windows 10, seeing that, my layout's changed. Windows 11, I'm sure you saw quite a bit of a visual change as things kept rolling out for updates. Another good example of a integrated program change is actually Windows 10 switching from Internet Explorer over to the main search, or not search, sorry, the main web browser being, that would be Microsoft Edge now. When things switched over to Edge, you probably saw some updates to download Edge and get new, things for that. And if you kept ignoring it long enough, eventually as part of a normal Windows update, they just rolled it out and said, hey, by the way, you have Edge now, congratulations. So that's one of the many different program changes that Windows 10 has implemented over its lifetime through Windows updates. So these are the kinds of things that you can expect and why Windows tends to keep rolling out updates. However, there are some tips and tricks that you can use to avoid long delays while your computer updates. Specifically, there are two that I tend to focus on. The first is restarting your computer regularly. Now, the reason I say this is you want to at least turn your computer off probably once every 2 days. That's just my personal rule. It's not hard and fast. Different IT experts will, recommend different amounts of time. Now, other than the component wear, which is mainly cited as to why you want to, turn off your computer and give it a bit of a rest, there are some other reasons that you want to update your computer and turn it off, turn it back on, and Windows updates are one of them. Normally, whenever you restart your computer, if there is an update pending, it applies that update. So if you're leaving for the evening, you just want to make sure it's done with, you tend to be able to just, turn off your computer. When you come in the next day, turn it on, go grab a cup of coffee. By the time you get back, your computer's good to go. Another thing that you could do, though, which is actually what I personally recommend, is schedule updates for when your computer is not in use. If you're one of those people who works from home, then this is probably the schedule that I would do. What you can do is you can go to your Windows system settings, and I'll show you after we get done with this short PowerPoint, I promise. There are only 2 slides left. But you go into your Windows settings, go to System, and if you don't know how to get there, all you need to do is hit the Windows icon on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, and then go to the gear icon. From there, you just go to Update and Security. It looks like a little circle formed by 2 arrows. It's normally near the bottom of your list. And from there, you can select when to run your Windows updates. Typically, you'll want to run this when you're not at your computer. For my home computer, I have it set to run Windows updates from 11 to 12. And then I also have it set so that if it hits, 3 a.m., the computer's not in use, it just powers down. So these are things that you can do through your Windows Update and Security Center, and we will show you how to do that here once we're done with the PowerPoint. The other thing I wanted to cover today was some useful Windows resources. These are just things that make using Windows easier. Windows 10 is what I'm going to be demonstrating this on. Windows 11 has some additional features you may want to use if you've already upgraded, and I'll mention those when I cover them. Some key efficiency features are also listed on the notes on this slide, which is included in today's handouts. If you haven't, I would recommend exploring that now. If you click the drop down on the handouts, you should see two. One is a Windows Updates presentation. That's the slideshow I'm going through now. And that also includes a bunch of my notes that are on each of these slides. I would highly recommend following up with this because in my notes are some URLs for some additional videos you might want to watch if you run Windows 11. It just kind of shows you in a little more depth how some of these integrated features have been improved. Additionally, I have a keyboard shortcut grid, which is just some of my most useful keyboard shortcuts. We'll be covering some more of those here in a second, but if you haven't downloaded that yet, I'd highly recommend it before the end of the presentation. Either way, some of the useful Windows resources, and we'll be covering all of these today, are universal search, the start menu features. So that's whenever you hit the Windows icon, the bottom left-hand side of your screen, some of the features that are available through that. Additionally, we'll be covering pinned apps, how to pin them, how to remove them, how to modify them, as well as covering some of your integrated calendar with Windows. Maybe one or two features you didn't know it had. Voice to text, which is pretty straightforward to enable and pretty straightforward to use. Although we won't be able to display that in full on my workstation. I'll get into that when I get there. There are also some Windows sizing shortcuts that's more prevalent in Windows 11, but it's something we'll be somewhat covering in Windows 10, as well as notification pane shortcuts and keyboard shortcuts. And some of my favorite keyboard shortcuts are on the screen now. That could be opening your file explorer with the Windows plus E key. That's one that I do a lot because I like to dig through the file system that we have here. We also could use Control F to find different things in a document or to access a search bar. Things like Control Delete, copy paste, and finally we have Alt Tab when Windows Tab, which is actually really powerful. If you haven't tried, using these sort of keyboard shortcuts to jump back and forth between programs, I think it can really speed up the way you work. Anyway, that said, let's get into displaying some of these different resources. So the first one that I wanted to cover actually was a little bit earlier, but it's how to enable those Windows updates. So what you're going to want to do to enable them is going to start with your start menu, which is actually what we'll cover next. Your start menu is this little icon down here. Here, I'm going to circle it for you with the pen. But it's this little Windows icon, bottom left-hand side of your screen. Now, I just circled it in brown, and I'm going to erase all of this as well. But essentially what this is your landing page, your home page for Windows. This is kind of what I use to get into all of my settings and what I sometimes use to access folders or different apps that I have pinned here. And we're going to get into what that is in a second. But to get into your Windows Update settings, all you have to do is go up to the gear, which is right over here. And if I click that, it opens up my settings menu. Now, this settings menu is kind of wide. If you have yours narrowed, it might only show the top few options. Just scroll down and you will eventually find Update and Security. If you click on that, then you will see Windows Update is available right here. As you can see, last checked for an update on my side at least today at 9:15. Now, you can also choose to pause updates for 7 days and use advanced options. That's something that a lot of different organizations use. As you can see, a lot of mine are, saved and managed by my organization, so I can't really customize those here. But you should be able to see some options in this screen for scheduling your updates and how you could go through that. It's typically very straightforward, but if you have any trouble accessing this, please feel free to give me an email and I'll happily send you some step-by-step instructions for how to get to your scheduled updates right from the screen. Additionally, one of the main things I wanted to cover today was this start menu. Now, the start menu is something that a lot of people tend to ignore in Windows, and I think that's a shame. Windows uses this start menu to kind of let you scroll through all of the programs that you have installed right over here in alphabetical order. So you can see whatever's on your computer, whatever's happening with it right now. You can just kind of see all of your installed programs. Now, this is great if you're trying to scroll through and find like OneNote or OneDrive. But let's say you're trying to find Internet Explorer and you can't find it in this menu for some reason. Maybe you're just ignoring the letter I, but let's say we can't find it. All we have to do is start typing. And this is something that a lot of people don't really pick up on if they're not native to the Windows environment. If I just start typing internet with my start menu open, it'll start searching. Now, this search option down here, I didn't have to click to enable. I didn't have to do anything. All I did, and I'm going to click off of it to show you again, is I clicked on the Windows and it brings up anything that it can find that is remotely related to internet. As you can see, we have our Internet Explorer app located here. We have Microsoft Edge, which is the Microsoft recommended browser. If you are using Internet Explorer over Microsoft Edge, into that in next week's presentation on web browsers. You can also access your control panel here. Now, the control panel is kind of like, here, let me go ahead and find some more information for you if we click on this right arrow. The control panel app is kind of just a general application used as kind of a hub for controlling what's going on your computer. If I hit open, it'll open it up right here, and it's just another way to adjust my computer settings. But it's something else you can access. If I'm going to search internet one more time, I also get access to different documents, things like this chat log. And let's just use this as a sample real quick. If I click on it right there, it opens up Microsoft Word. And now I have a chat log of all of the different chats that I had here on the 5/31/2022 Tech Tuesday, setting up your home internet. So there are a lot of things in here that you might realize, oh, well, I didn't realize I had that, but maybe I need it. And if you do decide that, you might want to try pinning it to the start menu. Pinning actually lets stuff show up over here on your start menu. If I search Acrobat, as you can see, I have this Acrobat Reader app. If I click on the drop down, I have a few different options that come up. First is to open a file location, and while that could be useful if I were looking for a specific file, it's not useful in this case. I could also use pin to start, which is what we're going to do, pin to taskbar, or uninstall from here. So if I'm trying to remove an app, I can just remove an app from right here. But either way, let's hit pin to start and see what that does. As you can see, it gave me a little information notice down here. And what that says is Acrobat Reader pin to start. Now I'm going to click off and click back on here. And as you can see, we have Adobe Acrobat Reader right here on the side. So if I ever needed to access it, I could just hit start and find it there. There are a few things that are a little faster than this, but I really like to use this feature for things that I don't tend to use often, still need to access. One thing people tend to pin here is OneNote or Microsoft Word, just so that they can easily pull it up, but it's not taking up room in their taskbar. Excuse me. You can actually move around and organize these into tabs. As you can see, I have Adobe Acrobat Reader moved down here now. And if I wanted to edit this group of programs name, I just click on that header and I can type it now. So I can say useful things. If I click off of that, now that subheader is renamed useful things. It's really important that if you're going to use this start menu feature, you probably want to organize things in a way that makes sense to you. And the start menu allows you to do that in a way that's a little more customizable maybe than the taskbar at the bottom of our screen. That taskbar is actually really useful. And what it can do is it allows us to launch these sorts of programs as well. For instance, if I go back to Acrobat in this search, click on the drop-down, focus on my bottom bar here as I do this. I'm going to hit Pin to Taskbar. Now do you see that icon pop up? That icon that just popped up is my new shortcut to activate Acrobat Reader. If I click on it, it might take a second, but it will start up Adobe Acrobat Reader. And this is just sort of a shortcut to get into the program. You can also, I'm going to close that message and exit out. Here we go. I'm also going to show you how to do this through, interacting on your desktop. Let's say that I wanted to be able to open up this GoToWebinar link from my desktop. Or actually, let's use GoToMeeting. All I have to do is right-click on the icon, and then I hit Pin to Taskbar. And now I have it available on my taskbar as well. Now, let's say I did that on accident and I wanted to remove it. All I have to do is hover over the icon, right-click, and hit Unpin from taskbar. And that's how I could do it. Now, Windows also has a few other taskbar functions that are pretty useful, one of which is this integrated calendar over here. And if I click on that, it shows a full calendar right here. I can just look through it and look through the days. But one thing I can also do is I can add events directly from here. If I hit the plus icon, then it'll start up a calendar entry, and it'll prompt me to add an account. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just go to the calendar for right now. But this calendar is actually fully synced to my Windows account. Now, the reason that that's useful is if I have, like, let's say a Windows phone, this calendar, as long as I'm logged in on my Microsoft account on both devices, will actually send the data back and forth between the devices automatically. So let's say I set up something for today, February 14th. Let's say it's date night, just to fit with today. And let's say it is not an all-day event. But let's say it's from like, 6 p.m. until 9. So the location is a place, and a location can be anything you type in. It doesn't have to be anywhere specific. And you can set a reminder. Let's remind me 30 minutes before. And then I hit save. As you can see, we now have this update here. Date night, we have the location, we have the date, we have the time. If I hit X and then just click on today's date, we have date night right here in my calendar, which is pretty useful, except a lot of people don't actually use this feature. What they tend to use is a calendar that's integrated with their email. And the good news is you can actually sync these things. Now, if you're using Outlook, all you need to do is know some of your Outlook login data. But in order to actually sync those calendars, you have to open the app first. And the way I do that typically is I just go to this calendar session and double click. Let's click that date or click an event, and it just opens up. Another way that you could do it is you could just search for calendar in your start menu, and it'll pull up this same app. It's this calendar app right here. Now, let's go back and look over all of our options here. What we're going to want to click is this settings section and go into manage accounts, add account. Now, when you hit add account, you get a few different options. There's Outlook, Exchange, Google, Yahoo, and iCloud. And that's what most people tend to use. If you're using a outlook.com address, then you're going to want to click that top option. If you're trying to sync things up with your Google Calendar, you're going to want to choose Google, Yahoo, Yahoo, iCloud, iCloud. You can also choose Advanced Setup if you are using some other sort of internet email scheduler. And then you would just select this option down here. Enter some key details here, and then it would sync all of your Outlook accounts, or not Outlook accounts, sorry, all of your email calendars through to this one calendar here. That makes it really easy. So if you have, updates scheduled across 3 or 4 different email accounts, you can use this calendar app to kind of sync them all together. And if you have a Windows phone or have something like this installed on your phone, then it'll sync to that as well. So you just have an integrated calendar. That's one of the things that I personally find useful about Windows, but there are a few other things that I know some people might find useful as well. One of these examples is voice to text. And I did say earlier I couldn't do a full demo of this, and I will show you why by opening up a Word document. Here at Cornerstone, we have a lot of things blocked on our computers just for data security. One of those things is actually our voice to text. And the reason for that is because voice to text gets picked up by, Windows, by all of the people over there, and they can see what you've used voice to text to type with. It's a permission that's necessary if you're trying to use voice to text to search for things or use the personal assistant on Windows 10 and Windows 11 Cortana. These things let them kind of pull what you're saying, turn it into text, and then run queries with them. Because we are, a health insurance firm, we don't want any of that getting out if someone says something they shouldn't and a microphone is listening when it shouldn't be. So we have that disabled, but it is something that is by default enabled on most devices. You can actually access this by hitting your Windows key and then the letter H. Now, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a little pop-up right here that showed up on my computer when I hit that. That says to use dictation, go to settings and turn on online speech recognition. If I click that option, then it'll bring up my speech recognition settings here. Now, I can't turn this on because I'm not a full administrator here, and honestly, I would like to keep it off personally on this computer. But if you're using a personal laptop and you just want to dictate something quick, you can open it up and say, make a note, I have a meeting at 3. And it'll say, hey, you've got a meeting at 3. Things like that. This voice to text is also what you can use to access Cortana, which is the personal assistant integrated with Windows. Cortana is really useful just to, kind of get a general feel for something you're trying to search in an instant. Or if you're trying to use it as a personal assistant, it's pretty good at that too. But in order to activate that on any sort of desktop, all you need to do is hit Control H, and if that setting is enabled, it'll go ahead and let you use it. It's also really useful if you're trying to write a really long essay. I like to just sort of talk out outlines. So what I will do at home, at least, is I will open up a Word document, activate speech recognition, and then just say like an opening paragraph. Turn off voice recognition, go back, check it for spelling errors and grammatical errors, and then move on. It really makes dictating things a lot easier, and it helps me with writing these scripts, or at least writing keynotes for these kinds of presentations. So it's something that I felt like I should share with everyone. It also is helpful if you don't have the best eyesight and you can't really touch type. So it's a really useful thing that you can use to just take notes in an instant. It's also useful if you use OneNote because you can have it, open up new pages, open up new tabs, and just say, dictate whatever you're trying to write. Really useful for note taking. Another thing I wanted to cover is some window sizing shortcuts. And to show some of that, we're going to actually be using this window right here. Now, as you can see, it went from full screen to just a popped out window. And I think most people kind of realize how do you do that. All you have to do is drag it to the top of the screen, and you'll see this sort of outlined box. If you aren't seeing that on my screen, I'd recommend trying it after the presentation. It makes it just a little white outline. When I let go, it sends it to full screen. One of the other things I can do, however, is I can move it to the left and let go. Now, when I do that, it creates 2 sort of smaller windows over here. One is a version of the PowerPoint presentation I have up on my other screen, and the other is a keyboard shortcut grid for Excel. And I'm going to click that keyboard shortcut grid because that's what we're covering next. As you can see, it creates 2 windows side by side that I can easily reference. And a lot of people already kind of know that that's something that they can do. But one thing that isn't commonly known, or at least not commonly known among people who haven't switched over to Windows 11, is that Windows 11 has some more advanced features that you can utilize with this. For instance, if you hover over this item here, that just says maximize. In Windows 10, if you click on it, it'll full screen your window, restores it down to a standard size window, and then to redock it, gotta drag it over and let go. Now, in Windows 11, that has changed, at least as far as I know. Instead of just dragging and dropping things, what you can do is, you can, drag and drop to the left, or you can hover over maximize. And what that does is it gives you a few different views. One of them looks kind of like this, side to side. Another is one long, one short. And I mean that in like a little box above and a little box below. And what that kind of will create is a view kind of like this. What that does is it has one program open over here. So I could say this is a summary. And then you can also have a keyboard reference along with a, full other window open here. A good use of this is for, at least applicable to me, coding. If I have a, text browser up here that I'm writing my code in, I can have some notes up over here, and I can have my chat window down here. So if I have, someone trying to message me really quickly, I can just answer it right over here. And if I'm trying to reference a function that I have, trouble forgetting, happens a lot, I have another little shortcut window up here. This is just a sample of one arrangement you could use, but you can use quite a few. And a lot of people nowadays don't have just one monitor, they have 2 or 3. So these sorts of features let you organize all of your programs across multiple monitors pretty easily. Another thing you can do in Windows 11 is you can actually group open windows of programs together. So like I could organize all of these 3 programs into one tab, and then have that tab just be open right down here on my taskbar. So that's a pretty cool feature. Obviously, it's only available in Windows 11, so I can't fully show it off, but it's something to keep in mind. Another thing is some notification pane shortcuts. And notification pane shortcuts, I'm going to kind of cover briefly. There are a few that I consider useful, a few that are superfluous. And what I mean by that is this area down here. This is called the tray. And the tray gives you access to all sorts of little tiny icons and status updates that aren't really fully displayed all the time in your notification pane. If I hover over here, we see this is the Windows Security Center. If I hover over here, this is WinVNC. It's one of the things that we use in order to connect all of our computers together. If I hover over this is the built-in GoToWebinar kind of thing. As you can see it, if you can see this hovering and read it, it says build yada da 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 in session. That just means that I'm currently running a webinar. Additionally, I have a quick new note for OneNote, as well as speaker control. If I just select this, I can control my audio output with this slider, as well as a quick view of my internet access. So if I can look here and just tell whether or not I'm connected to the internet. Pretty useful. It also has this microphone up over here. That just tells me that a microphone is plugged in. And this is our security center notice. This is our custom security software. So this is just something that we have installed on this computer. Also, there's this. This is the notification pane. Notification pane is where you'll see all sorts of different updates going on. These are things like, oh, I got a new email. Oh, Windows is telling me there's a new update I have to install. All of that tends to come from here. And as you can see, there are a few options down here that might prove useful. The one that I think is most useful is probably Screen Snip. What that does is if I click it, it kind of gives me an overview of my screen. If I drag and drop, I can just get a quick little snip of that area of my screen. It'll even give me a notice in the pane telling me that it's saved to clipboard. And if I just hit Control V to paste, Then you can see that this was saved to the clipboard, and I can just paste it. If you don't know how to use the snipping tool, that's probably the easiest way. Additionally, we have Focus Assist. What Focus Assist does is it actually kind of removes a lot of notifications, just kind of lets you focus in on what you're doing. It won't tend to prompt you for emails unless they're marked as important. So just be careful about whether you have that turned on or not. Another one that I find useful is Nightlight. All that does, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to fully see it on your side, is turn your screen sepia. What that does is it reduces eye strain in the evenings. So if you have like some dark room around you, it makes it a little easier to see. It's also very useful if you're trying to just, cut down on your eye strain, and you use this stuff a lot. And finally, from here, you can also get into all settings from this section here. And if I click it, it just opens up my Windows setting menu that I brought you to before. One final note before we kind of navigate away is if you're actually using a computer for a projector, you can control what it's projecting right up here with this project option. If I click it, then you might be able to see it. It looks like you can. Then it'll tell you how you want to extend or display your screens for a projector. Now there's no projector connected right now, so extend is just set by default. And I would leave it at that if you don't have a projector attached. Excuse me. Finally, let's get into some useful keyboard shortcuts. Now, I'm going to full screen this grid right here, but we're actually going to navigate away from it here in a second, just to show off some of these different features. This is the second piece that I would download if you haven't yet, and these are just some useful shortcuts that I personally use. Obviously, we've already covered Windows H, as well as, I thought we covered one other one. I don't think we actually have yet. But one other one that I kind of point out is Control-Shift-S. I'm actually going to do that now by hitting the Control key, the Shift key, and the S key. Now, I'm sure you didn't hear that, but it gave me a little notice in my headset that it's saved. It gives you a little tone. And that just tells me that it's done what I asked it to. Control-Shift-S lets you save whatever application you're currently in to where it is saved. So it saves over what you've done. It's useful if you're making edits and you just need to make a save real quick. Just Control-Shift-S, you're saved. Another good one to look at is Control-Alt-Delete if you didn't know about that one. I'm not going to demonstrate it here, but what Control-Alt-Delete does is it opens up kind of an emergency menu. It lets you log out of Windows if you need to. It lets you quickly turn off your computer if you need to. It also lets you access this feature called the Task Manager. And I'm just going to search it in the Start menu and open it up. What the Task menu does, or Task Manager, is it shows you what is actively running on your computer. Now, as you can see, we've got GoToMeeting, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word currently running. If I hit More Details, I can actually see how much of my computer that application is taking up as far as usage. Currently, the biggest one right here is this background process, this G2M Scry Util 64. And all that is a utility function of GoToMeeting. It lets it just describe what I'm doing to an online server. At least I believe that's what it does. Additionally, however, using this, you can actually force close programs. For example, that Microsoft Word thing that I'm using, I'm going to hit End Task. As you can see, we get a little pop-up here, and then it closes. And now I no longer have Microsoft Word running. This is really useful if a program isn't responding and you're trying to just close it out. And pretty much anyone should have access to this, no matter what your permissions are in your system. Another thing that's useful is actually Control F. If I hit Control F here, it'll give me Find and Replace. But for each different function or different program running on your computer, it might be a little bit different. Control F just lets you search for different pieces of text. For example, if I'm going to search window, hit enter, it jumps me to box C3, where it says find text and open window, or use the search function in application. Now, Control F might not always bring up a menu like this. In fact, if we open up our File Explorer, which is just how we find files in our system, we can actually do that with another shortcut, Windows E. And Windows is that little icon with the Windows logo on your keyboard. If you're using a non-Windows related keyboard, it's probably labeled as Command, just FYI. But that lets you pull up your File Explorer. And if I do Control F in File Explorer, it just puts my cursor in this quick search right here. And that lets me search through everything that I have available on this screen. For instance, if I go to this Windows Update and search for shortcut, hit enter, then it brings up my keyboard shortcut grid, which is the Excel file that is available under this folder with the word shortcut in its title. So that's another quick and easy way to just jump to a search pane and try to find different programs, as well as maybe finding different words. Another thing to keep in mind is Control-C, Control-V, and Control-X, respectively. Now I have this listed out here, but Control-C is copy. As you can see in Excel, there's a little dance of kind of lines, I guess, around this, and that lets me know that I have that selected. If I then select cell C22 and hit Control-V, I now have a copy of that section pasted. So Control-V is paste. And if I go back to this section here, C, and delete it, one thing I can do is hit highlight the one that I just copied and hit Control-X. Now what that does is it tells the computer that I'm trying to cut that section of text. If I select where I'm going to put it and do Control-V, it'll remove the text that I had selected and put it where my new cursor icon is. Now, here's where it gets a little trickier. And, this is kind of one of the ones that I'm going to cover, but I'd recommend doing a little bit of research on your computer before you do. We can rotate through a lot of different open functions with Alt-Tab. Now, as you can see, that opens up a little submenu. Alt-Tab lets us go through our active applications. And I'm going to highlight the center one, which is our PowerPoint, and go off by deselecting Alt. So I hit Alt, I hit Tab, and that lets me tab through all of my open programs that I currently have on this desktop. Now, when I say on this desktop, it's for a reason, and this is kind of what I was getting at. Now, I can Alt-Tab through all of my open applications, and I can select different applications that are open to run. For example, I'm going to open up Word again, and I'm going to situate it right on top of the Excel window, right here, as a blank document. Now I'm going to do Alt-Tab to the Excel grid. Now, if I wanted to select a different one, I could just tab through them. But I remove Alt, and boom, now that window's open. Pretty useful. But there's something that's even more useful, and those are all kind of located down here under your bonus shortcuts. Now, these are things that you can do. I'd recommend only doing it on a desktop PC. Technically, all things running Windows 10 have the option to do this, but not all computers are powerful enough to do this, so be careful. If you're running a desktop, you're probably fine. If you're using Windows 10 on a tablet with like an attached keyboard, you probably don't want to do this. But let's hit Windows D. Now, if you were watching that and everything closed, you're probably panicking a little bit. And when I did this the first time, I did too. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, what's available here? What happened? Well, instead of hitting Alt-Tab, let's hit Windows-Tab and see if we can see something different. Well, it didn't quite pop up. I thought it was Windows D. Ah, that's the difference. I apologize. Let's go ahead and open up one more thing and do Windows Control D this time. There we go. Now, if you were following along on screen, you might have seen kind of a shift of the window as I opened up something new. And what I did is I actually opened up a new desktop. If I hit Windows Tab, you can see there are two different icons up here. One says Desktop 2, and one says Desktop 1. Now, I'm not sure if you can see it when I opened Windows Tab, because I haven't really been able to get a good view of if GoToMeeting has this done in full. But if I click on Desktop 1 again, boom, now I have back Microsoft Excel. What I use this for, personally at least, is jumping between tasks. So I have one window open with our proprietary software, AGB. And then I have another window open with like an Excel window along with VBA, which is what you use to code in Excel. And if I get a call, then I can jump back using Windows Tab to my second desktop. And I can say, oh, hey, I've got this system open. I can take a call. What can I do for you? Then when I'm done with that, I hit Windows Tab again, jump back to desktop 1, and I have all of my programs that I was working on open. So I don't have to worry about rearranging windows, minimizing things, or jumping around. I can just multitask with different desktops. Now, the reason I said check your computer before you do this is because some of this can be quite computer intensive. It just depends on what you're running. If you have any computer from the last probably 6 or 7 years, you're more than likely fine to run this on. But where this gets a little iffy are things like tablets and phones. I really wouldn't recommend using it on something like that. This is more geared toward desktops and some powerful laptops. So that's just Windows 10 though. Windows 11, this is a core feature. And actually, if you download the PDF, or not PDF, I apologize, the PowerPoint for this presentation, it'll have a video that walks you through some more advanced options that you can do to use this feature in Windows 11. Either way, I hope you learned something new, and I appreciate you coming out for Tech Tuesday. Let's go ahead and if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. Also, if you're looking for my contact information and have anything else you'd like to ask me, please feel free to go ahead and email me or call me at the number below. I'm always happy to help, and I hope you learned something new. With that, I think that's Tech Tuesday, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.